Welcome, viewers and listeners, to the Mind, Body, Spirit's weekly High Vibe Tribe expert interview. And today we have a beautiful guest. Some of you may recognize her already, but I'm not going to say her name yet because I want to keep you kind of baited. And I am your happy host, Liz Garcia, and I created the Mind, Body, Spirit Network to help transformational leaders, visionary thought leaders, speakers, authors, and healers. We have a healer today, among other things. And bring them to the forefront and help everybody who's listening or aspiring to spiritual awakening or shifting somewhere in their mind, body, spirit, career, relationships, wherever. This is why we came into being and having a good time doing it. So I'm going to pique your interest with a couple of questions and give you a little hint as to what we're going to talk about today. So, have you heard stories of the near-death experience that completely changed people's lives? There's quite a few of them out there, and some pretty well-known stories have been told already. Or maybe you yourself have had a near-death experience. Whether or not you've had one or someone you love has had one, you're undoubtedly aware that this experience is often a dramatic turning point that completely changes the course of someone's life. And today we have international speaker and best-selling author Anita Moorjani, who not only had a near-death experience herself, but she now guides others to access the transformative wisdom they so often bestow. And as many of you may know, because I say it all the time, I am a partner of the Shift Network. And Anita has been brought in by the Shift Network to present something called Discover the Transformative Power of Near-Death Experiences, even if you hadn't had one. So before we start talking to Anita, and I love that, you don't have to have one to get some help from the other side. Right, Anita? Exactly. So let me just give you a little background information, and then we'll get started with some questions with Anita. So she is the author of the New York Times best-selling book, Dying to Be Me. And Anita, I have to tell you, I shared this with Roz last night, but we have a weekly, we call it High Vibe Tribe book review, monthly, where members of the network get together and share some of their favorite books. And last November, one of our members introduced us to your book, which I hadn't heard about. And she did a really great job of kind of giving her review of that and sharing what the essence of the book was. So I read it. And this is way before I knew this was coming up on the Shift. So I just want you to know I'm up to date on what's going on there. And it's a great read, super healing, which we'll get into that. And her latest book is What If This Is Heaven? So she's going to share, she shares her remarkable story of her near-death experience. So how this whole thing began is that Anita was battling with she had a 4-year battle with cancer and fell into a coma and was given days to live. And I remember reading this part, Anita. Like, seriously, did I have to do this to myself? You're thinking. And as her doctors gathered, attempting to revive her, she journeyed into a near-death experience, which is also known around the internet as an NDE, in which she was surrounded by unconditional love and deep wisdom. In this place, she was given a powerful truth, and that truth is heaven is not a destination, it's a state of consciousness. And during this experience, Anita was given the choice to return to her physical form or to continue on into this expansive new realm. She chose to come back. Thank you. When she regained consciousness, the cancer that had caused her organs to shut down began to heal. And to the amazement of her doctors, she was free of countless tumors and cancer indicators within weeks. Okay, she's been all over the place. And sold millions of copies of this book. And if you hadn't read it yet, I highly recommend. It's a great read regardless. And it's healing. It's like, I have to tell you, Anita, when I read the book, and I'll share some of I have a story that's kind of similar to yours, but I didn't die. I experienced heaven on earth right here in the body. But, you know, based on what you say on your website, you have this quote that really kind of struck me this morning. And that was, hold on, let me look at it. Okay, Embodying Love in a Fear-Based World. So my problem, which I didn't know, I came into I had a quantum spiritual awakening. And I experienced these high levels of love, ecstasy, like oneness, all the good stuff. But I was in a fear-based body and I didn't know what to do with it. So I invited something not so pleasant from that experience, but we're not going to go into that today. So I do want to talk to you about, I love that you've created a course around this experience, because what I wanted to get to is a part in your book that really like hit home and provided significant healing, was that when you were in your near-death experience, you felt like home, like this life is not true. Like, you know what I mean? It was just realizing that the truth is, that's kind of really our true reality, but you can correct me if I'm wrong, but having read that was like a huge relief to me. So if for nothing else, Anita, thank you for coming back to convey that message to me.
Oh, thank you.
So what would you like to share with us? I mean, I know for sure that, and I've been through 24 of these awakening incidences that are powerful, but if you're not ready for them, you get the swing back into something else you don't want to know about.
Yeah.
So it's like, you know, not pleasant. So it's traumatic. It's traumatic. Some of the experiences I had. And I realized that this type of book can help not only cancer patients, any type of terminal illness patient, and trauma, PTSD, to realize that there's something more than this trauma that you've had, and you didn't know that you were creating it. I heard loud and clear while I was going through this, you're the creator of this. I'm like, well, freaking help me out of this. So Anita, please start. I mean, a lot of people haven't read your book, so maybe you can share a little of the backstory and how you got here today.
Wow. So thank you for that intro. And so how I got here today, it's a long and painful start. So I had never felt I belonged my whole life. I was, my parents are Indian, Hindu, but I did not grow up in India. I was born in Singapore. We then lived after that in Sri Lanka until I was only 2 years old. And then we moved to Hong Kong. Hong Kong is predominantly a Chinese city. It's sort of off the coast of China, and most of the inhabitants are Chinese. However, the government at that time was British. It was a British colony owned by the British. The reason why I wanted to explain all that was kind of to share how I was always different. So I grew up in Hong Kong, predominantly Chinese city. My parents put me into a British school because they wanted me to be able to speak English, because the only choices were either a Chinese school or a British school. And so they chose British because then at least I would be speaking English and integrate in other countries in the world. And but we had a Chinese nanny who helped to take care of me from the age of 2. And she spoke to me in Cantonese and Chinese every day. My parents spoke to me in their native language, and in school I spoke in English. Now, the interesting thing is, although I grew up completely multilingual, completely multicultural, I was a different race and color from everybody around me. So to everybody, wherever I went, I was a foreigner. I was a foreigner in Singapore, which is my birthplace. I was a foreigner in Hong Kong. If we went back to India to visit family, I was considered a foreigner there because I wasn't brought up there. And I was different from the other Indian kids. I wasn't Indian enough. And so as I grew up, I felt I didn't belong anywhere. My parents wanted, so on the one hand, they send me to a British school, but on the other hand, they wanted me to embrace Hindu values, which I rebelled against, because one of these Hindu values was to be groomed for an arranged marriage. I rebelled against that. And but what happened is that when I was in my late teens and early 20s, most of my British friends from school were off to college, as were any Chinese local friends I had. They were off to university, college. I was discouraged from higher education because as an young Indian woman, the more educated and smarter you are, the harder it is to get you into an arranged marriage. So you're discouraged from that. And my Indian friends, because I had a few Indian friends, they all had arranged marriages and they were gone. So I was lonely because my non-Indian friends were in college or university. My Indian friends were married. And so finally I relented and I agreed to an arranged marriage. But 3 days before the wedding, I realized I couldn't go through with it. So I ran away. So that's a bit about my background. And I ran away because I realized that in the Indian marriage that was being arranged for me, I wouldn't be allowed to work outside the home. Whereas I had these dreams. I wanted to work and be independent and earn my own money so that I could travel the world. I wanted to be a commercial photographer or an artist or something like that. I was always kind of creative, and I used to like to draw, and I used to like to take photos. So I had all these dreams and ideas, and I realized that I would never be able to fulfill my dreams. And so 3 days before the wedding, I ran away, and I brought a lot of shame to my prospective husband, like my fiance's family. I brought a lot of shame to my family.
I know.
And I was, yes, and it was a huge deal in my community. And so I was ostracized from the community. My parents were told that no Indian man would marry me after what I had done. And so what happened is, subsequently, some years after that, my dad passed away, and I always felt my dad had been disappointed in me. And I met and married a wonderful man, Danny, but my dad had already passed away when I married him. But I ended up getting cancer. And I dealt with it for 4 years. I had lymphoma, which spread throughout my body. And over a period of 4 years, I reached what was considered end stage cancer. And it had spread, like I had tumors, some of them the size of golf balls, from the base of my skull, all around my neck, under my arms, in my chest, in my breasts, all the way down to my abdomen. My lungs were filled with fluid. I couldn't breathe without the aid of oxygen. If I lied down, I would choke on my own fluid. My body stopped absorbing nutrition, so I weighed about 85 pounds. I could no longer walk by the end of 4 years. I could no longer walk. I was so weak, I couldn't even hold my head up like this. My head was always hanging down, and I was in so much pain and so much discomfort. And it was February the 1st, 2006. I remember actually saying that I can't do this anymore. I had been fighting to get rid of the cancer in my body, fighting this, what I thought was a battle. It was like me against the cancer. And I gave up. It was just too hard. It wasn't worth fighting for anymore, because I was so tired, so weak, and in so much pain that I just surrendered. And on February the 2nd, I didn't wake up. I was in a coma, and my husband was with me. My mom had been with me because she had been helping to take care of me. So there was my husband, my mom. My husband called the doctor and said, she's not waking up. And I was being cared for at home because I hated hospitals. I had a full-time nurse that would come in. Thank goodness our insurance covered that. And so I was being cared for at home. But on February the 2nd, 2006, when I didn't wake up, my husband called my doctor, who told him to rush me straight to the hospital, which he did. And at the hospital, that was when the doctors told my family that these were my final hours and I wasn't even going to make it through the day, and that I wouldn't, you know, and this was it. Like if they had to call anyone to tell them that this was it, then to do so now. While I was in the coma, unbeknownst to everyone around me, I actually felt amazing. I had left my body, and I was looking down and I could see my body lying on that hospital bed. And I felt incredible and powerful and amazing. And all the pain was gone and all the fear was gone. And it's the best I ever recall feeling. And my body looked so small and insignificant compared to how I was now feeling. And I remember as I continued to go forward into that realm, I was aware of everything that was happening in the hospital and what the doctors were saying and what my family was feeling. I could feel what they were feeling, because it was like I realized that our essence or our consciousness is connected. When we're without our physical body, we are all connected. So I could actually feel what they were feeling as though they were my own feelings. And yet I knew that it was going to be okay, that even if my physical body died, it's okay, because time is not linear on the other side. It's like, it felt like it would be in no time before we would all be reunited on that side again anyway. And it was okay that if my physical body died, that's what was meant to happen. And I remember I had what I call 360-degree peripheral vision, because I wasn't looking through physical eyes. It was more what I call awareness. Like wherever I put my awareness, there I was. So I could see everything all around me and beyond the hospital room and down the hallway. I could see and hear the doctor explaining things to my husband and to my family. But then I started to become aware that I was going beyond the hospital room. And I started to become aware of other beings. And I felt like I was just surrounded and enveloped in this feeling of just pure, unconditional love. And there was no judgment. And for the first time, I felt I was home. And I realized in my entire life, I had never felt that I was home, because wherever I was the different one. I always stood out as being different. And for the first time, I felt I was home. I felt welcomed. I felt like this was it. This was my destination. This was home. And it was just amazing. And in that state, I encountered the essence of my dad, who had passed away 10 years prior to me having this experience. And my dad wanted me to know that he felt no judgment towards me for anything I had done. And I realized that in this realm, just as much as I was a victim of my culture, so was my dad. He was just trying to be the best Hindu dad that he knew how to be. And everything he did, he thought was right, because it was how he grew up. And you see, most people, when they grow up in their own culture, all they experience is a generation gap with their parents. In my case, there was not just a generation gap, there was also a cultural gap, because I was growing up in a different culture from my parents. And so that's why my life had been so challenging, because I was dealing with parents from a different culture, from the culture of my peers. And when we grow up, we are extremely in tune with the culture of our peers, because we so want to fit in. So that was I realized that was a big part of my challenge. But I also realized that when we cross over, not only do we leave behind our physical bodies, but we also leave behind our gender, our culture, our race, our beliefs, everything that we've accumulated over this lifetime gets left behind. And all that crosses over is our pure essence with the memories of the experiences of this lifetime to contribute to our whole consciousness. And I realized that just as I had left behind all of that, so had my dad. And so now here I was with his pure essence and my pure essence. And all I felt from him was pure, unconditional love. And in that state of pure, unconditional love, gosh, it still makes me emotional to think about it, because I had always felt judged by him in physical life. But I realized that in this state of the non-physical, there is no judgment, because when you judge someone, you're judging them for having done something wrong. And the other thing I realized was that it wasn't that my dad had forgiven me, it was something beyond forgiveness, because there is also no forgiveness, because in order to forgive someone, you need to have judged them to have done something wrong to forgive them. So I realized that all he felt for me was pure empathy, compassion, and unconditional love, which means that I was loved no matter what. He understood why I was the way I was, and I understood why he had been the way he had been. It was like we didn't even need to use language, because you don't have vocal cords, you don't have biology. It was like when two essences or two souls encounter each other and merge, you just know everything about the other one. There's no room for misinterpretation or miscommunication. I knew exactly why he had impressed upon me all those cultural values, because he had judged them as being the best thing he could do for me as his duty as a father.
That's beautiful.
Thank you. And so anyway, as I continued in that realm, there was just so much I experienced, which, we can unravel some of it during the course of this hour. But I reached a point where he wanted me to know that this is as far as I can go, and it was not my time, and I needed to go back. But
I didn't recall that your dad was the one who gave you that message.
Yes and no. So, it's really interesting. It was like I reached a point where I realized this is as far as you can go. And so it was my dad who was kind of guiding me, but it was a point where I realized, okay, if I go any further, I won't be able to turn back. But I wanted to keep going further. And it was my dad who discouraged me from going further. So it's like I reached this point where I knew if I go any further, I can't turn back. No part of me wanted to turn back, because it was so beautiful. It was the first time I felt I belonged somewhere. I had never in my entire life felt I belonged anywhere. And so no part of me wanted to go back. And I felt unconditionally loved, which is something I had never felt in the physical, not in this way. But the only person who I had felt unconditional love from in the physical was my husband. And Danny he's just the most amazing soul. But what started to happen is I started to get clarity that if I didn't go back, that my purpose was linked with Danny, my husband's purpose. And if I didn't go back, he wouldn't be able to fulfill his purpose either. And
So I have a quick question. I want to interrupt just for a minute. So did you encounter your husband's essence there as well, or just a knowingness that you guys had something to do together?
Just a knowingness that we had something to do together. So my husband was still here in the physical, and I didn't encounter his essence, but there was a knowingness that we had made an agreement to come here together, to spend this life together, and that we had been together, you know, for far more than just this lifetime.
Right. The reason I bring that up, because it's interesting to me that, you know, after I had my own awakenings, I opened up into all kinds of psychic kind of transmissions, you know, feeling and knowingness. And I've had people that are alive still come to me in essence and kind of communicate with me. I'm like, that's all I wanted to bring up. I found it interesting. I thought, you know, you only could deal with someone, only someone could come to you that has passed. It's not true. I felt it on numerous occasions that people
You
have
can,
come to me.
you absolutely can have people that are still alive come to you,
Yeah.
because time is not linear when we are outside of our bodies. And so you are accessing them in the part of them that lives on forever, and you are accessing them in the part of their life that could be between lives. But it's so hard to put it into words, but because time is not linear, when you are out of your body, you can access them, the part of them that is beyond their physical body.
Right.
So for example, my mom, she is 92 years old now.
Wow.
And, yeah, and she's still alive, and she is physically, she is fine. She's completely symptom free. She walks, she goes up the stairs to her bedroom, and
I assume she's read your book.
yes, and she lived my story. She
Yes,
was
I know.
in the hospital with me when it happened, and
Yeah.
she had said that if I had died, she tells me that she made a pact with God that if he takes me, that she wanted to cross over as well.
Oh.
This was what she was praying while I was in the coma. But she is
God
now
had a better plan for her.
yeah. Yes, God
Just
did.
sit
And
tight, honey. I'm going to bring your daughter back. It's all going to be good.
and she was so relieved and overjoyed.
I'm
And
sure.
but now she is 92 years old, and her memory is going. So even though she is physically, she's totally fine, her memory is going. And so she forgets things. And every 5 minutes or so, she will ask me the same question over and over. And so and I call her on the phone quite a lot, and she forgets where I'm traveling to and where I am when I'm calling her. And yet when I meditate or go into my own trance-like state or out of body state, I am visited by her that still is intact.
Wow.
I have had visitations from my mom when I am sleeping in my dream state. She comes to me and lets me know that she is fine, and she is fine, and she's completely happy inside. And that
Now, is she still in Hong Kong, Anita? Your mother?
she was in Hong Kong, and then she moved to India. What she did was she found it challenging as an older person, because Hong Kong is a very, very high density city. It's
I know
it's like New York. Yeah, it's like New York on steroids.
Yeah,
It's
it's more
higher
so than New
density
York,
than New
right?
York. Yes, more so than New York.
I can't
And
imagine.
it's not very should we say, old people friendly. It's you have to be young and healthy and earning money to be living in Hong Kong. And if
Right.
you're not, it's very hard to survive there.
Yeah.
So my mom left Hong Kong and she bought a home in India. And so she's living in India now. And so for my mom spent the first 16 years of her life in India. And at the age of 16, she left India to go to Singapore. So now in her older years, she's gone back to India.
Wow.
So she's living there now, and I go and visit her there.
All
And
right.
what's great, though, is that over there, she's able to get the care that she wants. And the care there is really, really good. And
Is she considered an Indian native?
she is. So
Okay.
she always held on to her Indian citizenship, and I didn't, because I became a British citizen. So basically, to add to all that mix that I mentioned, I am, so my parents are Indian. I was born in Singapore. I grew up in Hong Kong. I am British by nationality, but I live in the US now. So,
Okay. So your desire to travel the world, you're covered. You can live all over the world too, by the way.
yes.
Prayers have been answered here, my dear.
Yes. So,
I know you know that, but I'm pointing that out to our listeners and viewers that whatever's in your heart of hearts, hang tight.
Yeah, hang tight, because things, yeah, because and things can be like, your perspective on things can really change, because on the one hand, when I was young, I felt I didn't belong anywhere. Today, I feel I belong everywhere, because I can live in Singapore if I wanted to. I can live in Hong Kong if I wanted to, because I have a Hong Kong residency. I could live in the UK if I wanted to. I'm a UK citizen. I could live in Europe, and I have a work visa for the US, and so I literally can live anywhere in the world that I want to. And I love that. I love that I don't belong to any one place. I actually today love and cherish it, and realize that all of it, everything that happened, was for my benefit to take me to where I am today.
Nice. So you've settled on the US for now. How long have you been in the US?
I've been here 4.5 years now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and I'm liking it here so far.
Yes.
But it's like, if I find somewhere else that suits me more, I can always go.
And your husband's on board for wherever?
Yeah, he's great. So this is the synchronicity. My husband, believe it or not, has Indian parents, and was born in Hong Kong, and never felt he fit in, and went to a British school, and speaks the same 3 languages I do. He speaks the same Indian language because his parents are Indian, speaks Cantonese because we both grew up in Hong Kong, and his first language is English because he went to a British school as well. His parents sent him to a British school in Hong Kong. So
everyone got what they wanted, just not necessarily in the way they had hoped. Not exactly the traditional way, right?
Yeah, and his parents were hoping that he would have an arranged marriage, and he rebelled against it, because an arranged marriage means marrying somebody from India. Nothing wrong with that. Right. Love India, love the people in India, but the thing is that because we didn't grow up in India, we wanted to marry somebody who we clicked with. And it just so happened when we met each other, it was like, holy moly, you grew up in Hong Kong, I grew up in Hong Kong. We both rebelled against arranged marriages.
Did you meet in Hong Kong?
We met in Hong Kong, and very randomly. And it was just, there was recognition at first sight. He felt it first, because I had just run away from an arranged marriage. And so I was a little bit wary about meeting another Indian man.
So you met him fairly soon after that runaway attempt?
A couple of years after, but I had told my parents after that runaway attempt that I am not going to marry an Indian man.
I'll show you.
Yeah. And the universe was like, I'll show you. Never say never.
I know. Okay, so when did your book get published?
2012.
Okay, now I read Wayne Dyer's I Can See Clearly Now, that book. Did he mention you in that book? I forget it.
No, he mentioned me in Wishes Fulfilled.
I've read that book too. Oh, yes. Okay.
So he wrote about me like quite extensively in Wishes Fulfilled.
Okay, I knew he had, I thought so. And you must have mentioned him in your book about how it came about.
Yes, so I mentioned in Dying to Be Me. So what Hay House did is they launched both books at the same time. And Wayne he used to launch each book with a PBS special. Yeah. And so his PBS special for 2012 was called Wishes Fulfilled. And then he had me as a guest. And I was living in Hong Kong. And so Hay House flew me to the US, to Southern California, where they filmed the Wishes Fulfilled PBS special. And so he had me as a guest.
That's awesome.
to share my
Talk about
story.
wishes fulfilled for everybody.
Yes.
That's an amazing way to get started. So now didn't Wayne die of cancer as well?
You know what? He had leukemia at the time I met him. He had leukemia, and because he was going through it, my story really moved him. He found my story on the internet. So anyway,
Yes.
after I came out of the near-death experience, what happened was that the cancer just healed really, really rapidly, because my dad encouraged me to come back into my physical body. He said I had gifts waiting for me. My purpose wasn't done. I came out of the coma, and within 5 weeks, the doctors could find no trace of cancer in my body. I had changed my view of the world completely, and I didn't know what to do with what had happened to me. And my husband, Danny, encouraged me to just write about what had happened, just to kind of get it out of my system, or to get some clarity around it, just for very cathartic reasons. So I just started writing and writing and writing. And then my brother actually discovered a near-death experience website and shared that with me. And so I submitted what I wrote to that website, to the owner of the site, who happened to be an oncologist, who said, "Oh, can I check your medical records?" And I said, "Sure." And then he thought, "Wow, this is crazy. What happened to you shouldn't have happened." And he published my NDE story on the homepage of his website. And it sort of went viral. And that's how Wayne Dyer, somebody brought it to his attention when he was going through his own leukemia. And when he read my story, he told Hay House to track me down and to tell me that I need to write a book, which is what happened. I received an email in my inbox from Hay House saying,
Oh my
Wayne
goodness.
Dyer has discovered your story. I know, and I'm living in Hong Kong, and I'd never, I mean, for me, it was like completely out of the blue and
Now,
unheard
and you
of.
hadn't connected with Wayne at all, had you? Because he asked him
Ever.
Oh, did you know
Nothing.
who he was?
I knew who he was. I was
Okay.
aware of who he was. I knew of his books, and I knew he was an inspirational speaker. I had seen quotes of his, come pop up, and I had seen his books at the bookstores. But I knew exactly how popular and famous he was. So that's why I was like, I got this email, and I started crying. I thought, what? Wayne Dyer knows of me? And the email actually said, Wayne Dyer has become a fan of yours. And I thought, what? And because nobody.
And you're like, I just became a fan of mine. How could I have a fan?
Exactly. And so then I connected with Wayne, and he was amazing, and he mentored me through the process of, and he said, you got to get vulnerable, you got to get really deep. And he made me write things. They were all true. Everything I wrote was true. But he made me write a lot of things I was uncomfortable writing because they were personal and it was vulnerable.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, I don't want to share that. And he said, you have to put yourself out there.
Yeah.
And so I did. I dug deep, and I shared it all in the book, Dying to Be Me. And I'm glad I did, because the feedback I've had has been phenomenal.
Huge.
Really, really phenomenal. And it's, it hit the New York Times bestseller list, and within 2 weeks after its release, and
Wow.
it's now in 45 languages.
That's huge.
And then it's ended up being, like I get invited to speak all over the world. And Wayne first launched me on his stage, like I toured with him. And then,
gosh, woman, how are you keeping up with him?
his
presence is like,
his presence is huge.
Yes.
And so so during the time that, so he discovered my story in 2011. And so between 2011 and the time he passed away, which was 2015, so I knew him for 4 years, he was also seeing John of God, and he was doing a lot of stuff, and he was working on himself. And he was also using a lot of Abraham Hicks stuff. So basically, he healed from the cancer. So by 2014, he was actually doing really, really well. He was, at the time he passed, weirdly, believe it or not, he was cancer-free. He was running every day. He was swimming every day, and he looked the best that he'd looked in years. And we were on a tour in Australia. We were speaking in Sydney, Brisbane, Melbourne, and he looked really incredible. And so we went home from the tour, and I hadn't even gotten over jet lag. Literally 4 days after coming home from Australia, I got a call from his assistant saying he was gone.
Wow.
Yeah. So,
well, you know,
and
it's all good.
it is all good, because I still feel that I get guidance from him a lot. And from my understanding, he's gone on to do bigger and better things and continue to move people.
Oh,
And
in spirit, you mean?
In spirit, he continues to work.
Could you give us a little detail? That's pretty interesting. Or is that really generally what you are aware of?
It's generally what I'm aware of, because the number of people that write to me and say that they have been guided by Wayne, hundreds upon hundreds of people write to me and say they felt that what happened to them today, or what they did, or what they said, or what they created, or whatever, they felt that they were inspired by Wayne, or they were guided, or they got a message from Wayne. So people write to me all the time saying, I got this amazing message from Wayne Dyer, and I thought you would like to hear it.
Oh.
So it's been
but,
quite...
you know, was it in, you must have read I Can See Clearly Now?
Yes, I did.
Was that his last book or his memoir?
That was his last book before he passed.
Well, I took his advice. I was following his advice, and I kind of already do it for myself, where you call in the essence of someone you want guidance for, like Lao Tzu. Is that what the name of his teacher was?
Lao Tzu,
you know, some of the teachers that are from ancient history, you know, thousands of years ago, he calls in their essence. And I kind of have been doing that, but I was noticing he was kind of sharing that too. I'm like, oh, I'm going to keep doing that. And then when he passed, I'm like, I read his book after he passed, so I'm calling him in. I'm like, all right, Wayne, come on in.
So yes, he would be guiding you when you call him in. And so now, from that state, he's able to guide more people, because I believe that he did all he could because, you know, the physical form is quite limiting.
Yeah.
And so he had reached his full potential as a physical being, but his soul had so much more to do.
Yeah.
He had so much more to do. And so he had to be in the non-physical to fulfill that.
So are you suggesting, like, when you go into meditation, you'll have this essence of his presence? Have you felt that yet? Or is it more subtle?
Whenever I am on stage speaking, I still feel his presence.
Oh,
and
wow.
I very often feel his guidance. Very, very often.
Nice.
He comes to me mostly when I'm on stage speaking.
Oh, that's his, you know, platform.
Yeah, because I'll tell you one thing. When he passed away in 2015, I was appearing on stage with him like literally 10 times a year from the time my book came out. We were doing 10 events a year. And when he passed away, of course, all the upcoming events with Wayne were all canceled. And I thought, so apart from grieving him, I thought my you know, this felt like it was my calling, not a career, but yet I felt it was over in a way. It's like I felt my career was over.
Right.
Because all the events that were upcoming had all been canceled. But here's what's interesting. I have had more speaking invitations to come and speak. And basically, this is what I do. This is what my life. And the following year after he passed away, I was doing 24 speaking events in the year.
All over the world.
All over the world. And this is
Nice.
literally all over the world. And I knew that it was Wayne that was helping to spread my story. I knew that he was doing that from the other side. And I could feel him every time I was on stage. And there were just things, there were just clues I would see.
Yeah. Oh, nice.
Signs, and yeah, and that I knew that it was him. So and today, you know, it feels weird saying this because I don't like saying this about myself, but the reason I'm doing the course with Shift is because it's actually getting tiring flying all over the world.
I bet. And well, yeah, you can't reach everybody live.
You can't, and yet I'm getting invitations to come and speak everywhere, and I am thinking like, you know, I just can't do it. I can't do it. And so when I realized that there is,
Careful what you wish for, Missy.
I know, and there was me thinking in 2015 that it's over, and I should have known that Wayne would have figured something out from the other side. I really should have known.
Okay, so
Doing it.
There's a question there.
Mm-hmm.
After this experience, you still experience like fear and grief and loss, even though you know the truth. You'll still experience that, like some fears and which I have to tell you, when I was in my heightened states of ecstasy, I also felt like, well, because I felt like it was going to be forever. I'm like, am I really going to have this experience of consciousness for the rest of my life here? And I was like, can I? How could I do that? Like, I couldn't grasp fully it. And then I thought, but it's okay to feel grief and loss and sorrow. I still appreciate those emotions. Like, even though this exists, I do appreciate the ability to have grief and loss about someone who's passed, for sure, and honor and appreciate and love having had them in our life type of experience. And I always wondered if fear was necessary. But anyway.
Yeah, as long as we're in human form, you will never escape human emotions like grief and loss. But what happens is that when you are in touch with the greater part of you, the non-physical part of you, when you've had spiritual experiences, or when you allow yourself to touch that part of you, you don't have to die. You don't have to be as drastic. You know, I always tell people that I didn't heed the wake-up calls. I tell people that, in fact, don't think that I'm lucky or that I am enlightened. On the contrary, I must have been not that bright to need something so big to make me realize that we can access this state all the time.
Yeah. Okay.
We don't.
You're not alone there, Missy. You're not. I've created a big mess. We all create mess. We all can create big messes with ourselves.
Yep, we sure can. And
okay, so it sounds like these live events, you've created something there. Are they like retreats? Or are they just like, are you doing like retreats, 3-day retreats or week-long retreats as well?
I do week-long retreats. Oh. So of course I get invited to a lot of keynotes, like just to do 1.5 hour, 2-hour speeches. But I also do workshops, like full day and weekend workshops. But my favorite thing to do are the week-long retreat, the 5-day, 7-day retreats, because that's where real transformation happens, where you actually get to do energy experiments with people. You get to have them touch, to actually become aware that they are more than just a physical being, so that they can access that and use that as they move forward in the world. And so that is kind of what I live for, to teach and do, is to to have my audience for like 5 to 7 days. So that's kind of what I've been doing and creating and developing. And so when Shift said that that we're actually able to do that online, where you get people for 5 weeks, once a week for 5 weeks, but then you give them stuff to do in a community that they can stay in touch with each other. And you can actually put people into groups online, into little breakout groups of 5 or 8 people. Because I do that when I do my workshops and when I do my retreats, is I create these breakout groups where we do these energy experiments. And so when I realized that Shift could offer something like that, I thought, what do I lose? Let me try this, because then I can reach the people who can't come to my events, who can't fly to places where I'm speaking. So, because I really don't want to, flying, being at the event is great, but flying all over the place and being at airports, I don't like airports very much. So that's why
it's time to invest in a private jet, my dear.
I wish.
Doesn't Wayne have one in his backyard someone needs to use? Okay, so let me discuss your event real quick, and then I want to. So, if you guys are interested, this is happening now in June and July of 2019 through the Shift Network. You can register for the recording, because I understand you've already done the live webinar based on my research. So you can register for the recording at the mindbodyspiritnetwork.com/NDE. And you can check out Anita's event and listen to that live recording at your pleasure. The live course, when does that launch, Anita?
It launches on the 25th of June.
Oh, next week. Okay. So I believe the Shift Network still provides access to that, even though you may miss some of the live ones, or that they'll continue. Do you know anything about that? That they'll allow people to purchase that course, the recording of it?
Yeah, sorry, say that again. Say that again.
So if you miss the live course, I thought that the Shift Network has those all recorded so that you can still purchase the course.
So if you miss, so it's going to be every Tuesday at 12 noon Pacific. Every Tuesday at 12 noon Pacific, live. But if you cannot make it live for any of them or all of them, you will still be able to purchase. I mean, you will still be able to watch it. So if you sign up and purchase the course, you don't have to be there live. You will still have access to it. You will have it forever, basically. You can go back and revisit it over and over again.
Good. I thought so.
Yes. And if you're able to show up live, then the part I like about it is that it's interactive. So you can actually ask me questions in the Q&A part.
Oh, nice.
It's actually interactive, and you can participate. And in one of them, I'm going to be doing an energy experiment where people get into groups, and if you're there live, you'll be able to participate in that experiment.
Cool. And if you listeners or viewers aren't aware, when you're on Zoom, are you going to do it on Zoom, or do you know?
It's going to be on Zoom, but I think it's best if you get all that information from.
Well, in the event that it is on Zoom, I know on Zoom they have breakout rooms, and I've done this with online meetups where people break out into small groups, which is very cool if you haven't done that yet.
Yes,
very cool.
I believe it is on Zoom. I think you're right. It is on Zoom.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So let's talk real quick. I noticed on your website, if you want to check out Anita's website, it's her name, anitamoorjani.com.
Yes.
And I'll put a link to that on the video so you can see it and you know how to spell it. And it will be in the podcast notes. So there's a link there in case you don't know how to spell it. And I'll spell it, Anita. There's only one way to spell Anita that I'm aware of. And her last name is Moorjani.com. So, and Anita, I noticed you have this award-winning or top hit what's the heavenly CD you did with?
Oh yes, I did a near-death experience CD. So I have 2 meditation CDs. One is the Heaven and Experiential Journey, and the second one I did is the NDE experience, which actually takes people on a guided journey to have their own near-death experience.
Oh, okay. Is it kind of like an out-of-body experience? Are they similar?
It makes them access their expanded state. So it's particularly if somebody says, I can't meditate. Well, here's a guided journey, and this is deeper than a meditation.
Oh,
it's actually not a meditation. It's more a guided journey.
Okay.
And then the music is sound healing. It sounds by Barry Goldstein, which actually takes people into this other state. So the music goes in and kind of, how would you say it? It's the way that the tones are constructed actually alters your brain waves to take you into this other state.
But I love guided meditation.
Yeah, and it is really to make you feel expanded and to access your other state.
So Anita, it's Barry Goldstein, right?
Yes, Barry Goldstein.
Now, isn't he a fairly well-known sound healer type of individual?
Yes, he is.
Yeah. Is he out of Boulder?
No, he's in Arizona.
Okay. Yeah. Maybe I'm thinking. And does he work with Sounds True? Do you know?
No, he doesn't. He's an independent.
Okay. I thought I've seen his stuff on Sounds True before. I do pay attention to these things. So those two CDs, they hit the Billboard top 2 in like sound healing, like, right?
Yes, they
Wow,
did.
like quickly.
The NDE one reached number 2 on Billboard. So.
Look at you. Go and get yourself all wound up in your head about, I'm not good enough, this, that, and the other thing. I'm going to give myself cancer for 4 years and be miserable. And then I'm going to wake up and have fun.
I know, isn't life interesting?
So
yes, so I really had spent a lifetime beating myself up and
I know. Well, that's what
wasn't.
humans do.
Yeah, exactly.
We're learning how not to do that slowly but surely. And this, what you're doing, is super. I wanted to bring up this other book. I don't know if you've heard of The Afterlife of Billy Fingers.
Oh yes, I've heard of it.
Have you? Okay, amazing book, super healing like yours. But the thing is, he's dead. But he comes back and speaks through his sister. His sister is getting the feed of him.
Yes, it's a great book. I loved it.
Great book. Oh my God.
Yeah.
And I had this experience. I like to share this experience because I was pretty pragmatic. I don't know when this happened. It must have been the early 90s. I was walking to work in Boston, and I lived in Cambridge, and I walked over the Boston University Bridge every morning with a Sony Walkman on, not an iPod, Sony Walkman. And this song comes on by a Train called Drops of Jupiter.
Oh, I love that song.
Love that song. I'm listening to the lyrics, and as I'm hearing it, I'm feeling that they're talking to me. I feel like this song is speaking to me loudly. And my feeling is I'm not of this world. And I would not share that with anyone. I'm like, I'm not of this world. I feel more celestial in nature. And then when I read Billy Fingers and read your book, it kind of confirms what I was feeling in a big way. So anyway.
Wow, that's a beautiful experience.
Yeah.
Gosh.
So anyway, I think that's it. Unless you wanted to share anything else, that newest book, or you need to run there, Anita. I'll cut you loose.
My husband is signaling me because I have another appointment coming.
Okay, I thought that was the sign. Thank you, Danny, for being in the background and signaling her and being her life partner. Does he want to stick his head in here and say hello?
You want to say hello?
Can we see who?
Shy.
No. He doesn't want to be vulnerable, or what?
He's not camera dressed, or just
that's okay.
Hello. Say hello. He'll say hello. His voice.
Hello, everybody. This is Danny. To meet all of you.
You should be a DJ, a shock jock, maybe. I don't know. Anita, thank you so much for joining us, and I will I'll thank our audience. You guys listening out there, you can find us on the podcast at highvibetriberadio.com and on YouTube at highvibetribetv.com. We'll have all the links we promised for Anita. And go get her book, Dying to Be Me. You want some healing light. That'll help you out. And it's a really enjoyable read. Thank you, Anita. Have a great day.
Thank you.
I love that artwork. Is that yours? Is that your artwork there?
No, I didn't paint this one, but okay. I love it. I love the colors.
It's a nice one.
And thank you. And thank you so much, Liz, for doing
My pleasure. This was fun.
It was.
Okay.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
Namaste.